2021 is winding down fast. It's already mid-December. It's cold for Southern California. Got the flannel on, but we're all warmed up and ready to show you the stats for last month, talk about the rest of this month and into 2022. Let's check it out. Hey everybody, I'm Chris. I'm one of the guys on the team. Jessica will be back next week. We've got a lot going on these last couple months, so we broke up the trench report that Jessica's going to show next week and our monthly stat report here. Stick around to the end. I'll show you two community events, starting with the Temecula Rod Run, following up on the Murrieta Rod Run that I did a few weeks ago, and the Polar Express. Alright, let's get into the stats. As always, this is single family homes only, which means no land, condos, townhouses, or anything like that. And we look at the cities of Murrieta, Temecula, and Menifee. Starting with the median sales price for Murrieta, we have $629,000 versus $525,000 last year. That's up 19.8%. Now as I go through these stats, you'll see the 19%, 19%, and 21.6% in Temecula, and it's going to sound like the same story with rapid increases, big increases, 20% or so. But I'm going to make the argument here, going out on a limb, and say that prices are stabilizing a little bit. That's what I mean with that thumbnail. Prices stabilizing, in my opinion. On this chart, I want you to look back to April. You see April, that's where we touched 600,000. Slight dip in May, 590,000. And then in June we go 615, July 625, August, September, October goes 620, 615, and 625. This is my first example of prices stabilizing. Ever since it crossed that 600,000 point in April, we've basically averaged 615,000 since then. So that's 7 months. The 629,000 of this month versus April of 600,000, that's 4.8% increase since April, which is an increase, but in my opinion that is more stable and sustainable. Now let's try Menifee now. 522,500 versus 438,500 is 19.2% since last year. Now for Menifee and Temecula, I'm going to take the last 6 months and do June through November. So let's look at June. That's where Menifee crossed the 500,000 point. July 515, August 520, September a little dip 505, October, November 525,000, and then November 522,500 after another little dip since the prior month. If I take that 525,000 last month and compare it to June 6 months ago, that's 5%, 525,000 over 500,000. So again, I think that is a stable, sustainable number, and I hope this continues. Next, Temecula. 675,000 versus 555,000, that's 21.6%. But again, these last rolling 6 months, if we do June, in Temecula, 684,500, July 670, August 695,000, September 700,000, October 712, 500, and then November we've actually taken a little dip to 675. The 6 month average for Temecula is 690 versus back in June was the 685,000. To me, these Temecula prices, they're bouncing up and down some, but they're holding relatively stable for these past 6 months. You can use these 6 or 7 month rolling averages to compare Temecula to Murrieta and Menifee now. So that 690,000 that I just said about Temecula versus my 615, 620,000, that's 70 or 75,000 differential between Murrieta and Temecula. Menifee, I had that 515,000 rolling average, so that compared to say 620,000 in Murrieta is 105,000 difference between that city. Real quick, if you're finding this information helpful, I hope you consider subscribing below and check out the playlist. We don't mention this much in our other videos, but here's the playlist for our monthly stat reports. We've been doing this since July of 2019. That's almost 2.5 years now, 40 going on 50 monthly market updates. All right, let's get back to the stats now. Now I usually end with number of listings because I've been watching this like a hawk all year, but I'm going to put it second this time. Number of listings in Murrieta, 206 versus 232 last year, down 11%. Menifee's up 233 versus 203, up 14.8%. And then Temecula, 187 versus 206. Now in my other videos I've been really watching Temecula. It's been ticking up some. Now I'm going to give you a stat that me and Jessica have been talking a lot about these last couple of weeks. Now here's our stat on listings that we're going to just will into reality, but we'll be saying it a lot. Our Association of Realtors did a survey. It was of 1 or 2,000 people, and of those 1 or 2,000 people, 24% said that they were thinking about selling their house in the next year. So that's a big number. 1/4 of people surveyed potentially putting their house on the market. This is why I think there will be more listings next year, and that will start to contribute to prices stabilizing and putting a little bit more power into the buyer side. All right, let's look at closed sales next. 180 versus 201 last year, down 10%. 177 versus 200 in Menifee, down, and 177 versus 200 last year in Temecula is also down. Another thing I like to do when we're doing these closed sales is just mention how many the Genung team has closed in the last month. Now we go back and forth, should we show you this stuff? It feels a little bit like humble bragging, but again, we're in sales, so you can't sell a secret is another cliche, so here it is. We decide to show it sometimes like this. All right, next stat, median days on market. I've also been having a lot of fun with this one this year. Let's start with Murrieta, 11 versus 7 last year, 10 in Menifee versus 6 last year, and 10 versus 5 in Temecula. Just like I did with prices, let's look back to, say, March, April of this year. So March, April, May, we had 5 days on market in Murrieta. June and July, we had 6, and we went to 7 in August and September. October and November now in Murrieta, we've had 11. That's a pretty big jump from 7 to 11. It also reminds us of our casino days, 7-11 craps stable. I kind of like to play with the numbers like that sometimes. Moving on to Menifee, starting in May, we had 5. That was the low for the year. June, 7, bounced down to 6 in July, and back to 7 in August and September. So basically 7 from June to September in Menifee. And then in October went 11 and back down to 10. But again, 10 or 11 versus 7 in Menifee is also a pretty solid jump in number of days on market. Finally, Temecula, that 10 versus 5 last year. So very similar to Murrieta, March, April, May was 5, then June, July went 6, August 7, 8, in September, and then October, November we've gone 10. So again, 7, 8 jumping up to 10 in Temecula. These last 2 months confirm what we're seeing when we're out there showing properties. It's not as unusual to see a property that went on the market before last weekend lasting into a second weekend. So out there we are seeing some properties that are just overpriced, and those naturally will sit. The market is punishing those sellers and agents that shoot for the moon and try to get too high of a price. All right, that wraps up the stats. Let's look at some community events now. I showed you the Murrieta Rod Run in Old Town Murrieta on the last market update. This month we had the Temecula Rod Run. So I want to thank our former client Haley. She was willing to share this footage of her family enjoying the Temecula Rod Run. Let's check it out. The next community event I want to share with you is the Polar Express up at the Train Museum in Paris. We've been talking about doing this one for a couple years. My son JT especially loves trains, so we took him up to check out the Polar Express. Our Polar Express video starts with loading up the car. We're all wearing our pajamas, and we stopped by a property at Heritage Lake to do a client gift. The client wasn't there yet, so we went to the sales center, dropped it off with there's Stephanie and Alan there in the background at Lennar Heritage Lake. JT, let me see your ticket. Joshua. No, you need to wave at him.
Apologize for that terrible crashing sound. The chef's happy.
I believe I heard the bell ring.
What then? But one thing to do. The first gift of Christmas.
I'm going to keep this to a shorter version because I'm a proud dad, and if I kept everything that I wanted to keep in these videos, it'd be too long. So in the description below, I'm going to put a link to my personal YouTube channel if you want to see the full version of the Polar Express. Thanks for watching. Bye.